Intersect Inc. I work at the health department in adolescent health and youth development. Today is the 5th training of our Blueprint Approved Institute. If you didn't grab a flyer, we have some up here. We're offering 10 free trainings this spring. So we have 4 more after this month, and we encourage you to come and attend as often as you can. They're on Thursdays from 1 to 4 here at URA. This is part of our bigger Blueprint Approved Institute initiative, which is a capacity building institute that we're offering for small organizations to gain additional resources and training and access to working with the city. So in order to be eligible for that, you need to have attended 5 out of our 10 trainings. So there's a flyer on this as well. Please, if you think that you might be interested, go ahead and speak to me during a break or after the training, and I can give you more information about it. We also have some materials up here for some events that are coming up with the city and the health department, so feel free to take a look at those as well. So today our topic is housing and sex trafficking. We have 4 wonderful speakers today. Our first speaker is Terry. She is from Breaking Free. She's going to be doing a little bit of a longer presentation, and then we'll have a couple shorter presentations followed up by a panel and time for audience questions. So after Terry's done, we will go ahead and take a break, but grab snacks, and we should go ahead and get started. So I'll turn it over to Terry. Like I said, she's the executive director with Breaking Free. I'm going to let her give you her information. Thank you.
Hi friends, good afternoon. My name is Terry Ferletti. I'm the executive director of Breaking Free, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pimp culture and recruitment. Breaking Free, for those of you that may or may not know, is a survivor-led organization. I am a survivor. I was in the life for 30 years. Most of my staff are survivors. And we see about 350 women and our girls, because we're 18 and older, a year. We are not safe harbor, okay? We're not safe harbor. So we handle the women. We have, Benita Carter was the founder of Breaking Free. And she started Breaking Free in 1996. And at that time, she knew that we had a serious problem in town with our prostitution services, in that one of the biggest barriers to getting out of the life, and by the way, prostitution, sex trafficking, you know, if you go up to a youth today and ask if you've been sex trafficked, they'll say, what does that mean? You know, or me or whoever. Those aren't terms that anybody really readily identifies with. And we don't use the term prostitute at all anymore. We call it being in the life, because there's a lot of other things that happen when you're in the life. Not only are you having sex all day, 5 to 10 times a day, just to let you know, is the average in America. It could be up to 40 times a day in other countries, but here it's 5 to 10. We have to make between $800 and $1,200 a day. That's our quota. If we were in New York, if we were in Chicago, somewhere else, it might be a little bit more. If we were in, let's say, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, it would be a lot less, but we probably wouldn't even go down there, because this is all about money, okay? It's all about money. And we can be sold over and over and over again, okay? And that's why it's so lucrative. Drugs are consumable, obviously. We're not. We don't always age out of prostitution. Last week, a couple weeks ago, I went to court with a woman who was 61. The youngest person that we've seen provided services to at Breaking Free was 10. The oldest was 81. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the realities that we go through in the recruiting part. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today so that you understand what these women, what we go through, and how we get turned out, and what are some of the influences that men have that allow them to even live with themselves for buying and selling human beings. So let's look a little bit at what this is all about. So our mission is to end all forms of prostitution and sex trafficking. Simple. It used to be to provide services for those exiting, da, da, da. Forget it. No, let's end this. I hate this movie more than anything. Pretty Woman, right? And they play it every 20 minutes. And now it's going to be a Broadway play. Isn't that horrible? This is not what prostitution looks like. I think we all know that. So there's images people have about what it is, what it isn't. Let me tell you something, it's not glamorous. And never once in the 30 years that I was in the life did I ever take money home myself. Oh, that's what I was trying to say before. Okay, I got a little off. Okay, so when I was talking about in the life, so it's prostitution, it's homelessness, it's helplessness, and then there's also very often other crimes that we get involved with. Okay, so here's a true story. One day I go into a Perkins, my pimp and some of his other consociates, whatever you want to call them, associates, were sitting around. They said, Terry, I want you to write this check. I didn't change my name because I refused to change my name. Write this check. And I said, well, you know, I'd prefer not to do that. It's going to be a felony, and because it was like $2,400. I said, I already got a couple of felonies. I don't want to do that. They said, no problem at all. Take this room key. See these 3 guys over there? I want you to take them to the Holiday Inn across the street. Be with them until 5 o'clock, and then just meet me in the back. Go in the back to the side, and don't be late. I said, where's that pen? So I wrote that check, and I did get a felony. So there's a nexus. There's a nexus between when we are in the life and a lot of the behavior that we have to do. So, because it's all about power and control. So, recruitment. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a real story of recruitment. My recruitment was just a little bit different than others. I'm going to talk to you about a real situation. One of my staff, and she has given me permission to tell her story because it is a very, very typical story. And I think it's important that we understand. Now, I'm preaching to the choir, you know, to some of you, but I want you to know that this is a real life story. So, 1981, we'll call her Susie. So Susie grew up in North Minneapolis, not far from here actually. She had a sister and a brother and a mother and a father. Her mother was very, very Catholic, religious lady, went to church all the time, but her father was a player. He liked to go to bars, he stayed out late, did all kinds of stuff. Well, there were some other, there were some issues going on with the fam. And mom and dad weren't getting along. They ended up getting a divorce. Susie was so mad at her mother that because her father left and he was the fun one of the family, that she told her mother, I am going to spend the rest of my life making your life miserable because of what you did to us. And she did, by God. So what happened was, shortly after he had left, she ran away. She was 14 years old. She ran away, and back then, there weren't a whole lot of places where youth hung out. There were places called arcades. Some of you remember that, okay? We didn't have, like, video games and stuff back then. So there were these places where you'd go in and play, like, video games and stuff. And so there was one downtown on 6th and Hennepin, right across from a place called Schindler's Bookstore. And Schindler's Bookstore was an X-rated store. Next to that was the American Empress, and then Moby Dick's down the street. And this is back in the day. Back in the day on Hennepin Avenue. So Susie runs into the arcade, because that's about the only place where kids are hanging out, you know, where you were allowed in. She goes in there, she's in there for a little while. She's observing. Because she ran away. She wants to know, how am I going to make it on the streets? I got to watch out and see how these other people are doing. What am I going to have to do? Well, some guy comes in, and he is really witty. He's charming. He is vibrant, he is kind of loud, and very handsome, and starts talking to all the people in the arcade. Well, Susie's noticing this, and she's like, this guy's what's up, man. I need to talk to him. I need to get with him. And so as the day went on and she started talking to him, of course he had his eye on her right off the bat, the second he walked in the door. So he starts talking to Susie, whatever happens, and so what he's trying to do at this point is what we call the lover boy strategy, okay? Lover boy strategy is one of the common methods for recruitment back then as it is today. It's someone posing as a significant other, because you've got to understand that the dynamics of sex trafficking are, you've got somebody with a vulnerability. It could be a pre-existing condition, it could be a congenital anomaly, you don't know, it could be someone that's got fetal alcohol syndrome. It could be someone that has schizophrenia. I don't know if what you guys are seeing in some of your programs, but I'm seeing a huge increase in autism. Lots of folks coming in that are autistic. So you've got this vulnerability, and maybe it's a drug addiction. Maybe it's that somebody like me, I was raped at a young age, and the only way I knew how to deal with it was to cope with it was to do drugs. Who knows what that vulnerability is? Okay, it doesn't really matter. It's somebody with a vulnerability, someone with an unmet need, and usually it's lack of attention, affection, any kind of love, support system whatsoever. Someone comes along with a false promise, and that's your equation. So that's what the pimp's trying to do. So they go and they're around the city. So now he's got to be a little bit subtle about this, okay? But this is kind of how the recruitment goes. So after a couple weeks of him taking her to his crib, and they were hanging out there, probably not doing a whole lot of stuff, just watching movies, everything's hunky-dory. Wow, that's an expression from the past. So what he'll start doing is he'll start driving down Lake Street. He'll start driving down Lake Street, and he'll say to Susie, hey, Susie, what do you think about this? What do you think about what's going on over there? And she'll say, well, it looks to me like some gal, you know, she's a prostitute. You know, she looks like she's a prostitute. And he'll say, yeah, she is. And what do you think about that? Well, I wouldn't ever want to do that. You know, he goes, well, you know what? I respect her. She's taking care of her business. She's taking care of her family. She's a strong woman. I respect that. I need a strong woman in my court. So it's these subtle messages. It's these subtle messages every single day. A little something, something here, a little something, something there. Until you start buying the lie. So what happens is, after a couple weeks, Susie's parents start looking for her. She's 14, she's gone. And despite whatever, they're trying to find her. They're trying to get her back. So he gets wind of this and he moves her to New York. And I'm sure a lot of you know that there is a pretty large amount of trafficking that goes on between Minnesota and Minneapolis, St. Paul, and New York. So much so on 42nd Street, there's an area called the Minnesota Strip. A lot of blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skin type Nordic look. And it's been going on since about the 70s. There's a guy by the name of Al Palmquist that wrote a book about it, The Minnesota Connection. He's an officer from Eden Prairie. So then they moved to New York. So still, Sarah, or Susie, is thinking that this is cool. This guy loves me and he's gonna take care of me, white picket fence, the whole thing. So one night he comes running in. Susie, oh my gosh, so-and-so's gonna kill me. And this is the other thing. When you first meet a perpetrator, you're gonna start seeing a lot of violence, because that's part of sexual exploitation, is a lot of violence. So, and they want you to know that this is real. So there may be some things that are going on, like I remember sitting around, we were right across from the post office on, I think it's 11th or 12th and Hennepin. There was about 7 of us staying in this honeycomb, whatever you want to call it. And I remember people coming in and out, and I remember this one guy always saying, work it, work it. And I knew he was talking about to my guy, who I thought was a boyfriend at this time. And I was pretty sure he was talking about me. But I'm thinking, work it. No, that's not something I want to be going on. So what happened was, so let's go back to Susie. So Susie he comes in, these guys are gonna kill me. Remember a couple weeks ago when we did this cocaine or alcohol or whatever, and we used the $500 where they want their $500 today. And if I can't come up with the $500 today, he's gonna kill me. Now, this person he's claiming is gonna kill him, she knows it's violence because she's seen the violence before, okay? Otherwise it might be kind of a false promise type thing. So she says, well, what can I do? You see where this is going. All right, so he says, if you could just be with them the way you are with me. He's not using crude language at this point. He's not saying this or that. He's trying to make their relationship seem like it's something special, which it isn't. And if you just be with them, and I swear, if you scream my name, I will be out there in 2 seconds and I will help you. What do you suppose happens? She goes in there. Within the first 30 seconds, she's sodomized. She was urinated on. She was raped by a couple guys. She was kept in there for about an hour and a half. Lots of pictures taken, which is very, very common because that's going to be used as blackmail later. Or in some cases, it might be a sick way of analyzing how you're performing sex. And that's why pornography is brought in so often. But that's a real typical story of how somebody gets turned out. So after that hour and a half, she's in there getting raped over and over and over again. She's crying. She feels like a dog. They may have done some really disgusting things that she can't ever even talk about again. And then she comes out of that room and he picks her up and he twirls her around and he says, Susie, you're my ride or die. I love you. Now I know you are down for me. Now I know that I love you. And we're going to make, and she stayed with him for another like 7 or 8 years. So that is a real story about how somebody gets turned out. I had something very similar happen. When I met this guy, I was in the life. I was more involved in addiction. I did not want to get involved in prostitution. I used to go to Porter's Bar, get drunk, and tell the guys, why don't you go out, come back and give me the money. Didn't go over well. And pretty soon, my pimp friends from Memphis said, no, you're not going in there, Auntie. You're not. And so the night that I tried to leave, after I'd met my abuser, I was staying with him for a few weeks. I said, thanks. It's been good. We had some fun. We did some cocaine, whatever. See ya. It didn't go like that at all. So I was laying there, I was in my pajamas, I was starting to change clothes, because there's like 6 or 7 other guys in the other room, and it's an efficiency apartment. We have like a little blanket or sheet between us and them, not even a door. He picked me up by my ankles. My pajamas fell over, my nightgown fell over my head. He started digging in my rectum thinking that I had money and drugs hidden. Because some people do. Sometimes they do have to hide drugs in orifices. But I didn't. I didn't even know that was a thing back then. So after he beat me, I knew I wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. So we talk about stripping as a gateway. In fact, of the 350 women that we serve each year at Breaking Free, and then I wanted to tell you, I was starting to tell you, but I got off track. that happens a lot. I don't know if it's the trauma I went through or 30 years of cocaine. Either way, but I do the best I can. So, sorry, it is what it is, and I'm old. But so, yeah, breaking free housing is one of the biggest barriers. We have 3 18-unit apartment buildings that are permanent housing places because we know, okay, I remember this when I was first getting out of the life and I was going to this program and they said it was 18 months. What do you suppose every day is like? You know, next month, 17, 16, 15. Oh my God, I only have a year left. So that's all you're thinking about. It's, oh my God, where am I going? This is only temporary. So you always have anxiety because I have 3 felonies right now. You know, and it's not, I'm 56 years old. I have to have my mom co-sign to get an apartment. Come on. Praise God, I hope she doesn't die anytime soon because I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm serious. These things don't ever go away. Jobs, you know, housing, it's all barriers. So yeah, so we have the 3 18-unit apartment buildings, and quite frankly, most people don't move out. They stay there for a while unless they have such egregious violations that we have to ask them to leave. If they're smoking crack in the hall every day, all day, which does happen. Guns, it does happen. Stabbings, they do happen. And a lot of that, well, has to do with our housing programs. You know, through the HUD system with coordinated access and whatnot, we have to take anyone that's given to us, and people are not mandated to go to groups anymore or be sober, which is a little bit of a difficult situation we have with housing. I don't know about you, Tamara, but it's kind of a tough one to manage, you know. So what we do is, and I understand HUD's philosophy behind it, it was they feel that just because you're an addict doesn't mean you don't deserve housing. Thank God, because I'm an addict. But I can't think of a better time that I need some advocacy, just that when I'm just getting out of the life. That's when I need advocacy, that's when I need to stay sober, and that's when I really need to focus if I'm going to get better. And that's what I need to do if I'm going to stop the generational curses. If I'm going to stop this for my daughter, who's 15 right now. Because I lost my 2 kids, my 27, my 23-year-old, I never got them back. But what I didn't figure out when they were 2 and 5 was that someday they're going to be 18. So that's one of the things that we see with the women that come in to Breaking Free and to any program is we don't always have our children. And we want our children. We are moms. And we might not fit the culture's definition of a good mother, but we still love our children and we want to be moms. And someday we want to have a relationship with kids, even though we might not get them back. And I don't think everyone should get their child back. We're just not all ready. But anyway, so that's why we have permanent housing. And then the other thing is, even if they had a congenital, even if they had like FAS or something, when you're in the life, you get guns to your head, you get beat up, you have so many things happen to you. We have women that have plates in their head. Plates. We have women that are have PTSD so bad that they cannot function. They're never going to work in the public and private sector, so we're glad we have it. But that is only 3 18-unit apartment buildings. That's not even close to what we need. And we are always at capacity. And one thing that the Super Bowl showed us is that we need some human trafficking shelters that are specifically for human trafficking. We were at capacity during the Super Bowl. Lorena and Joy Friedman came over in the middle of the week, and we're just trying to, where can we bring this person, where can we bring that person, and just doing the best that we could. But we were really lucky because the city of St. Paul and the city of Minneapolis let some of us stay open for 10 days. 24 hours a day. So it was a big giant slumber party at Breaking Free, wasn't it? All the conference rooms, everywhere we had beds set up and blankets, and so we know. But that Monday, when we weren't allowed to provide services anymore, and how sad was that? So we've been operating our drop-in center since then, and I'm happy to report we've had somebody every single day. Yesterday we had 3 people. We're only having 4 beds because if we let folks know we have 15 beds, we'll have 15 people there, and we're not staffed for that. We're not staffed for any beds, really. So, but we will provide showers. We'll provide an opportunity for people to sleep during the day. They gotta go at 5 o'clock, but at least they can sleep. When I was on the streets, there was nothing, nowhere to sleep. You had to pay someone to help to watch you, because I was on the street a lot of times. So if I find some place like maybe a porch or something, see, when you're homeless and you're on the streets, you can't just go to someone's house and say, oh, do you mind if I crash on your couch, without any expectations. No, you pay when you're on the streets. You pay with sex or money or drugs. You just have to. And that's including sleeping. And so now they're talking about all these folks that are hanging out on the buses and in the skyways and stuff. Let them. Shoot. Common places for recruitment. It could be anywhere. I'll tell you what, just driving down the street at a bus stop on Plymouth, the Broadway. Hey baby, you too fine to be riding the bus. I'll give you a ride. Could be something as easy as that. Mall of America, God help you if you go there and try to recruit. Who's there? Oasis is there. They've got a precinct in there. They got all kinds of stuff going on at the mall, so good luck. I think they do a pretty good job with security at the mall. So this is what we talked about a little bit. The first customer, gang rape, forced drugs or alcohols, new fake name. And a lot of times we're given a new name, because part of this is to break down our identity. We're not human beings. You know, so Brandy's new name would be, I don't know, Diamond. You know, Lorena's new name could be China. You know, those are really popular names. Red. You know, so you hear those names over and over and over. It's because we don't care about Brandy so much. And I don't really want to know about you. I just need to know that you have the body parts that are going to make me money. But don't you dare open your mouth, either one of you. Because this isn't about who you are. If a man wants to have sex with someone, all he has to do is go to a bar and pick somebody up. This isn't about having sex. This is about purchasing another human being with money. And that involves their fantasy. So don't you talk to them. And don't even give them eye contact. So these are all things that we learn from a very early point of time. I was appalled when I first started seeing some of these things. I didn't know that I couldn't just sit on a couch next to anyone I wanted to. What? No. You don't sit next to a man, and if you sit next to a female and you don't talk unless you're told you can talk, it's just a whole crazy thing. And it's all part of the brainwashing. And the reason we fall for it is because we feel we don't have any other options. We've been told over and over again, we're good for nothing. My mom's in jail. I don't know who my dad is. My sister's out in the life. She's working. I don't know anyone who isn't. I have a 6th grade education. This is normal in my neighborhood. I don't have any money. Plus, I was told this is the only thing that I can do. Lots of violence. Threats to victims and family, and yeah, that happened too. I was with a girl a few years ago, and she had a sugar daddy. Actually, he wasn't a pimp. He was her sugar daddy. She lived with in St. Louis Park. But he was also part of the Jordanian mafia. Yeah, and she knew that he had $13,000. So Shauna said, I'm going to steal the money. Will you come and get me? I said, oh, heck yeah. Because that means I don't have to turn tricks for a while now. You know, so I want any excuse to not have to have sex with someone. So I pick up Shauna. She goes, he's at the bar. We got to take off. So I'm a little scared. So we go down to Treasure Island Casino. And we're there for a while, and she gets really paranoid, and she's high now because we just bought a whole lot of cocaine. And so she's getting real wigged out. She said, bring me back up to the cities. Let's go to Mystic Lake. So we go to Mystic Lake. Well, the next day I noticed some people standing by the doors, and they just look suspicious because when you're in the life, you are aware of everything around you. I was just thinking of this today. Okay, think of it as like 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no walls here, but we're outside here in Plymouth. And it's completely dark, and you're by yourself. You have to be in tune to any kind of movement, anything out there. A tree over there, what was that? Was that a person? What was that? What was that? So you get these hyper-vigilant senses going on. And I spent too much time on that. What was I saying?
The trip to Mystic Lake.
Oh, yeah, thanks. So the trip to Mystic Lake. So we found out, I said, go down there and find out if they have accents, because if they do, we know they're Jordanian. And they did. They did. And then about a half hour later, the guy came up to me and he said, I went to school with your sister, Debbie, at Winona State back in the early 80s. And so he threatened my family. I had no idea how he made this connection, how he found out what was going on. So now my family's threatened. And I said, I tell you what, I'll bring you Shauna, but I'm staying with her for 24 hours because you're not going to hurt her. She ended up stabbing him, and he lived, but then a couple months later, she was drinking and she got out of the Lowry Tunnel. Maybe you guys heard about this a couple years ago. She got out of the Lowry Tunnel on the driver's side, boom, and was hit and killed by an oncoming car. So we talked about this too. Forced participation in other criminal activity. So you're brainwashed, you got no money, and then one of the biggest things is you got no ID. So that's the first thing that's taken from us, is our ID and our birth certificates. Because without ID, can you get a bank? Can you get a checking account? Without ID, can you get a job? Without ID, can you get a P.O. box even to have your mail sent there? No, you can't have any of those things. The false sense of love and loyalty, isolation. We're pitted against other women, we're pitted against other men. And I was so ashamed that I did not want my family to know, so I stayed away from my family for many, many years. The face of the demand. The face of the demand could be anything. Now, the reason I say this is because of the 350 women that come through Breaking Free each year, 69% are women of color. What is our state percentage of people of color? Anybody know? 9. And that's combining. And so that's pretty sad. That's real sad. So we have a disproportionate number of women of color that are being trafficked. Now, what do the Johns look like? The Johns look almost exactly like what our state demographics are. So if there's 1% Native American, there's 1% Native American Johns. If there's 85% white men of privilege, which there are, there's 85%. So this is the profile of a John, because I did write our database and I'm a big data head. Despite years and years of drug abuse, I just love databases. So we've had this John School we also have, which is once a month. So men that have purchased women that are 18 and older come to our John School, and we have a city attorney that's there. We have, and he talks about the community. He talks about how he'll get a call from a lady who's babysitting her grandkids, and she pulled out a piece of gum and it was a used condom. How are you people coming to our neighborhoods, having sex in the back of your car, throwing your used goods out? You don't care who comes by and sees you having sex. Well, these are our kids. These are our neighborhoods. These are our streets. And then what happens when you're having sex in the back of the car and the next day you pick up Susie and Billy and bring them to soccer practice, and one of them cuts their leg and they're on that same little back seat that you had sex with last night? What could happen? they could pick up some infectious diseases. You don't think about that. So we have John Penland talks about that. We also talk about the fact that he's not perfect. He had some pornography addictions. He had a lot of things going up too. He was not the man that he is today. And he talked about those rites of passage. How many times men's first sexual experience could be something very unhealthy. Men experience rape and sexual abuse too. And then again, Julia Roberts with her damn Pretty Woman, believing that it's a mutual thing. And why wouldn't they think it's mutual? We have to be nice to them. We have to make them think we want them. Otherwise, we're not going to get paid. So what we do at John's School is we have a reality session for 8 hours. They have to pay $750. We have 3 of our women that come in and tell them exactly what they felt like when they were in the life. Not necessarily to shame them, but just to let them know. You know, when we were in that room and you were asking me, oh, what can you do to me to make me feel good or whatever? Leave. You know? Leave. I don't want you in any way, shape, or form. You know, I don't want to be here. This is not turning me on. Nothing you can do. You know, but you can't say that. You know, but then other girls will say, well, you know what? I'm thinking about my kids that are at home, that my babysitter. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about where did I go wrong. This could be someone who was trafficked from 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, who finally runs away at 14 years old and gets picked up within the first 48 hours, and for the next 15 years they're trafficked and they want to know where they screwed up. Really? So that's one of the things we do at Breaking Free too, is we talk to them about that healing process, about how that was not a choice. We talk about the continuum of abuse, the trajectories, and how we got to where we are. It took me almost 40 years to remember something, a rape that happened to me when I was 15 years old by my boss, who at that time was dating a girl by the name of Sheila Bernhagen, who was Miss Minnesota. He was 28 years old, she was Miss Minnesota, and he raped me. Who's gonna believe that? So I kept that inside for many, many years. And not only that, I didn't consider it rape, because in order for you to be raped, you have to hit really hard, right? You have to pull their hair, you gotta bite them, you gotta kick, you gotta do all this stuff. That's rape, right? Because you're trying to get out of it. Well, not everybody's response is the same. Flight, fright, freeze. And at that point, that trauma made me freeze. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything, I was crying, he knew I didn't want to be there. So that planted my seed. So, the John, I go all over the place. So, the profile of a John is a 47-year-old white male, and this is over 1,200 cases, okay? So 1,200 men that have gone through John's School over the last 8 years. 47-year-old white man who is married, has children, at least one of them is a girl, has a bachelor's degree or higher, makes $75,000 a year or more, does not live in a 5510 or a 5540 zip code, meaning, you know, in the inner city. They drive 15 to 30 miles. Now, even if they're out of the Twin City area, they could drive even farther than that. And that they don't have a criminal record. That's the average profile of a John. And they come in all shapes and sizes. So this is just kind of an infographic we put together a couple years ago. So here's some of the myths and stereotypes. Legalization of prostitution will make it safer. Women in prostitution make money. Prostitution is about sex, sexual freedom. If a woman doesn't have a pimp, she suffers less abuse. Men can't be victims of prostitution. That's false. There are some women that don't have pimps, but that's usually not the case. Because what is this all about again?
Money.
Money. Money. So, if there is somebody, wherever this woman is working, so let's say she's working on the street or a back page or whatever, someone's going to find out about it, usually another male or what we call a bottom bitch, who's the head who could be the equivalent of a pimp, but don't forget, she's also going through Stockholm Syndrome. She was also groomed to be that, as was a pimp. But, someone's gonna pick her up, and you can't go rogue on the streets. There's lots of films that talk about that. Sexual freedom. Okay, so sometimes you may hear of these folks in town. What are they called? SWAT? SWAG? What's that group of sex workers? SWAT, something like
It's
that.
SWAT.
Okay. So there's this group of folks. Well, and there's lots of them.
Sex Workers Outreach Project. SWAT.
Yes.
SWAT.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it is. So people often ask me, what's up with that? Well, I get a little angry and a little, it's a little personal for me because I've had sex so many times with so many people that paid rape lots and lots of times. So, nobody can convince me that it's okay, that any of that I went through is okay. But that's just my opinion, okay? So, but this is what we can say. We can say that even if you are that 1% of the people who gets to pick and choose your tricks, most of us don't. We don't pick and choose. We have to go where we're called. If you get to pick and choose them, and/or if you have a sugar daddy and you say that it's okay and it's never hurt me and leave me alone and these are my rights and whatever, I'll say, okay, fair enough. But this is what the deal is, and you can't refute this. Okay, so a John or a trick or the person you're having sex with is like a burning building. You do not know if that person has a gun, a knife, another person in the room, something else, acid that they're gonna pour on your face or on your vagina. You don't know if they are gonna insert a curling iron and kill you because that happened a couple months ago. You don't know what's gonna happen. It's very high risk. So I can walk through this door and say that I wasn't burned or singed. That doesn't mean you weren't. So you can call it what you want, and you can have your own opinion. But it's not going to negate the fact that John, that trick that you're going to have sex with, is very, very, very dangerous. And something could happen. So you say what you want about it. And that's how I'm leaving that. Because, or else when somebody says, and I'm sorry, but you got to get a little personal about this. So Benita Carter used to always say this. So when the girls say, leave me alone, and they'll say, oh, I love the clothes, I love the dinners, I love these kinds of things, it's all wonderful. And she'll say, honey, no. What about when he tells you to get on your knees, baby? Well, I don't want to talk about that. What about when he says, get on your tummy, or turn over, or do this, or do that? What about that? How does that make you feel? Not only that, I'm going to take it one step farther. There's no doubt that sexual exploitation is violence against women. And it is something that's very, very harmful to people. So anyone that goes against that principle, that agrees with objectifying women and thinks it's okay to objectify a woman, and I'm talking about sex workers, saying it's okay because that's what we do. Anything less than exposing that for what it is unacceptable. Is unacceptable. You have got to expose this for what it is. It's violence, it's paid rape, and that's what it is. Pimp versus whole culture. So, pimps have this image that they're the big caretakers of, it's hard out here for a pimp when you're trying to find the money for the rent. We see all these different glamorizations, although I don't think Hustle and Flow was really a glamorization. In fact, it was pretty down to earth, except for the becoming a big rap star. I don't know if he ever was or not. But that's kind of what it was like down. In fact, my pimp came from Memphis. I know that house in Memphis. That's a real house. And I'm sure what was going on in the movies is going on now. But, because it's a horrible, horrible climate of poverty down there. It's horrible. Even if we did start a program in some of these cities, I think, what are we gonna do? They're not gonna get a job, because part of having a program to help people get out of prostitution and sexual exploitation is to help them with their skill set, help them with their GED, help them get a job somewhere, learn about what they like, learn about what some of their skills are. We have transferable skills, y'all. I was really good at communicating. I was really good at customer service. I was pretty good at money management, even though I didn't get any of it, I still brought it in. Okay, so we tell our girls, you got skills, and we're gonna build a resume for you. It's not gonna look like what a traditional resume is gonna look like, but it's gonna have something on it. And it's the first step in helping empower them. And that's what's so important. So, the reality is traffickers are pimps, pimps are traffickers. They prey specifically on vulnerable individuals. They know where to go. They know where our alternative schools are. They know where our Alateen meetings are. They know where our lost groups are. They know where our most vulnerable people in society are hanging out and what they're doing. And they are the top in the food chain of being in the life. Oh, by the way, back in the day we used to call it the mafia, organized crime. Does anyone think that went away? No, it didn't go away. It just looks a little different now. So you can have big, huge pimp organizations. So what this is about is on a societal, community, and a relationship level. So this is what, and there are books written called Pimpology, and there are YouTube videos that you can, oh God, I hate even saying that. Well, nobody in this room wants to do that, but there are videos that you could watch to do this. So what we want to do is we want to first of all look at a community, a neighborhood where there's poverty, there's high alcohol and drug use, a lot of violence, diminished economic opportunities. Then we want to have a relationship with that individual that we talked about. You're going to look for someone where there's family conflict, where there's something. Oh, and then this is the other thing, the eyeballing. We've got to talk about the eyeballing. So how you look at people is one of the ways that will make you vulnerable. So, if I look at you, I know I've seen you a whole bunch of places before, I can't remember your name though, for real. Kathy, hi. Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you doing? So you guys have some, Nigel? Yeah, we're making eye contact, but let me tell you where there might not be eye contact. If somebody comes up to a 15-year-old girl that was just raped by her boss and says, oh my gosh, you look so pretty today. Thank you. I'm not going to look at you because I don't feel pretty. I feel that whole rite of passage that I grew up thinking I needed to be a virgin. My mother didn't get married in a church because she was pregnant with me. She was Catholic. She would always tell us, you know, I had to wear a yellow dress and don't do that and da-da-da-da. And so when it happened to me, I thought that whole rite of passage is gone for me now. Who's going to want this used goods? But, so I'm the one that's going to look down. And then, so that's what these guys are looking for. It's called eyeballing. The other thing is if I'm under the auspice of a pimp, I cannot look at another man because it is going to be perceived as I'm switching up. What?
Choosing up.
Choosing up, and I don't want to look at a girl. And I can't look at another female either because that is perceived as we're going to be pulling something. We're going to be doing something. So it's all about isolation. So we talked about this. the conceptualization, how the dating abuse can lead to sexualization by a dating partner. We just call that the lover boy strategy. Okay, Lorena, can you read that first one?
Yeah. I had just moved back to Minnesota from Chicago because my parents thought Minnesota was a safer place for our family. I was working at Camp Snoopy. I met a guy who worked there. We started a relationship and I left home to move in with him. He turned me out for prostitution, and he also beat me and called me names. I finally got out when the police raided his house.
Brandy, can you read that one?
They'll start to dress her, think for her, own her. If you and your victim are sexually active, slow it down. After sex, take her shopping for one item. Hair and her nails is fine. She'll develop a feeling of accomplishment. The shopping after a month will be replaced with cash. The lovemaking turns into raw sex. She'll start to crave the intimacy and be willing to get back into your good graces. After you have broken her spirit, she has no sense of self-value. Now pimp, put a price tag on the item you have manufactured.
So, pimps are drawn from communities where vulnerable people are regularly exposed to dangerous people and activities where there's a lot of violence and where it's accepted. They target people with certain characteristics that the perpetrators view as valuable. I think we covered a lot of this. So it's all about the motivation. Power and control. It is safer than selling drugs, and it's very, very profitable. So if you got 3 girls working for you, and we each come back with, let's say, $1,000 a night, for an average. That's $3,000 a night. That's $21,000 a week. That's a lot of money.
Where's it going?
Huh?
Where's all that money going?
Well, a kilo of cocaine costs about $14,000 right now. 15,000. It's going to buy drugs. Some of the drugs are going to be given to us because that's our payment at the end of the day. Some of it's going to go to create more revenue. More revenue. It's going to cars. It's going to his family to support his family and friends. Because usually there's a lot of folks working together. There was always 4 or 5 guys around my pill. And they all had their own thug dizzle. They all had their own little hustle, if you will. But no, it's, you take care of each other. It's called a gapper. I'll throw you a gapper if you need a little something, something. But we take care of each other in the streets. Pimps do.
Yeah.
We don't get it. Power is control. These are some other things. It's about money, power, respect. Keep your hoes away from families and other haters. Have a snitch and encourage snitching on each other. That's how you keep the women pitted against each other. And by the way, do you suppose in our housing program there's women that maybe have had the same pimp and they live in couple buildings and maybe share baby daddies? Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. I'm telling you, housing is the hardest thing. But you could still get some more, and you guys can get some more too. It's very, very hard though. So, yeah, they don't trust anyone. Don't let anyone know your plans. And they may just do the telephone thing. Tell someone something so that they can spread it to see how they trust somebody or how they don't. So there's all kinds of opportunities. I know several slumlords that have sex with their tenants. Law enforcement, there used to be a contest in one of the precincts, I'm not going to say which one, where the cops would say, if you get in the back seat of the car and have sex with me, I won't take you in. And we did, and they still took us in, and they would count how many people they did that to. Well, that's not going on anymore. And that new precinct was doing a good job. But no, that was very real for a very long time. We know, unfortunately, that this happens. And by the way, in 2017, of every single person that was arrested in Cook County, Chicago, of everyone that was arrested for sex trafficking or solicitation or anything to do with sexual exploitation, 70% of them said they were recruited by a family member. 70. That's huge. And now Cook County's a little bit of a different animal because we know it's kind of concentrated. So it's not the whole city of Chicago. So it makes a little bit more sense. But still, that's a lot. That is a lot. Massage parlors. Oh, this is the other thing. Were you talking about this, Lorena, the other day when we were talking about, people were saying how safe the red light district is? And it's like, yeah, well, if it's so safe, why is there this big red button next to my bed? You know? So all these brothels, and by the way, women that work in brothels, there is debt bondage before you even get in. So there's like it's like a, let's say a $1,200 fee to work at a brothel in Reno. Every condom you get, you have to buy from them. Every time you need your linen washed, you have to pay them. So do you suppose you get out of that bondage anytime soon? No. No. And is it safer? Absolutely not. There's peer-to-peer. These ladies can talk about that a little bit more with the youth. And it's not that they're even trying to get their peer, their friend, caught up. It's not that they're trying to traffic their friend. It's that, hey, I got a hookup tonight. I know where I can sleep because it's going to be 20 below with the wind chill, and I don't want to be on the street. And I know this guy, if you just go get on your knees for a couple minutes, he'll let you stay there. Let's go. She's not trying to pimp out her friend. They're just looking for a place to stay tonight. And then understanding and using the right vocabulary. So we don't use the word prostitute anymore. We say prostituted. Some people, I don't know. I heard someone say the other day they don't like the term sex trafficked, but I would rather say I was sex trafficked than prostituted for some reason. I don't know. Patron, John Tripp. Okay, so right now we call our John School. We're thinking about changing that. Yeah, we're thinking about changing the name. And we're thinking about also providing some other kinds of things into the John School, like relationship building and some healthier rites of passage and things like this. And we're working with some folks on changing that. So maybe Real Men Demand Change or something like that, because we do have the Demand Change logo, or we have that for Breaking Free. So something. So we're looking at changing that. We have to call them daddy, whatever they tell us to. And then here's some terminology. Stable, family, wife-in-law, daddy, gorilla pimp, a Mac, bada bitch. You might all hear these terms. And then I just wanted to let you know that this is not limited to a single event. It's a continuum of exploitation and abuse. And don't put people in boxes. Everybody's different. All right. Did anyone learn anything today?
A lot.
Okay, good. That was my big thing. Do we do questions now, or do we wait that for that panel? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know, like, for the Johns, it seems like that's a really nice name and they're treated very nicely. And I don't know if it's because they're white males, but I mean, do they serve any time? I think that they know what they're doing. I don't think they need to be taught what they're doing. I think they know what they're doing. So I'm trying to understand a couple of questions. Are they repeated offenders?
Yep.
And
Very good point. Okay, yes, two things. Number one, they're not repeated. First time only. Okay? It's first time only. And I wouldn't say they're treated like gold or anything like that. No, by no means. I wouldn't say that at all. But I agree with you, John. That's a nice name, right? No, you're a purchaser of sex. That's who you are. And like you said, I think it's sadomasochism myself.
I do too.
Yeah, because if you want to have sex, you can have sex. This isn't about sex. This is about power, control, and money. And about having your way with another human being and controlling another human being. But yeah, no, I wouldn't see them treated with kid gloves, and it sure as hell isn't because they're white. Because that's what we talk about, white men of privilege and colonization, and how those of us that are women, that are people of color, African American and Asian, it was written right into the Constitution that they couldn't buy homes or be educated or whatever back in the day. So this is a continuum. We actually use an Afrocentric approach. We talk about slavery. We talk about the oppression, systemic. We talk about welfare and what that did to the community. We talk about all that, separating the family from slave days to welfare. If you're married, you're not going to get the same kind of benefits you would if you were, what? You know, that kind of crazy stuff. From the slave days, separating the parents there, and how that's perpetuated, and what it looks like today. So, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Are you out of your mind? We know where this oppression came from. But no, we're not treating them like white men of privilege at all. Trust and believe, and that's one of the first things we talk about, because that's where the problem is. That's where there's these underlying attitudes and assumptions that men have, that we live in America. If we have a lot of money, we can buy something. And if we have enough money, we can buy anything we want. And if it's mutual, then why wouldn't we? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink at the, seriously. So that's what we're getting at, those underlying attitudes and opinions. Where the hell did you come up with those? And so that's what we do. And yes.
Typically with the jobs in the schools, like what kind of sentence do they receive for their?
Oh yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say. Okay, so if you're purchasing someone 17 or under, it's a whole nother ballgame. Praise God. So you're going to get a felony finally. And and then did anyone see the St. Paul paper yesterday? Filled with a bunch of John's pictures. And yep, there was a big sting, and all the pictures were put in the newspaper. I told Todd Axtell, the chief of police, that I'd like to see sex plates, like whiskey plates.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, big W's.
Yeah. Instead of the big W, a big S or something. He said that was a great idea, but good luck with that. Yeah, that's probably not coming anytime soon, because look at even just recently who's been arrested and who's doesn't have to go to all the schools like everyone else. It's horrible. Yes,
I
my friend.
can speak just a little bit on the third precinct, as we work really closely with them. We work really closely with the city attorney's, Minneapolis City Attorney's Office, Nicole Applebaum, and one of their main initiatives right now is to target sex buyers. Obviously, then arrest women even over the age of safe harbor, so over the age of 24. So they're putting in now. I'm forgetting the numbers, but I think either 3 or 4 times more likely to arrest sex buyer than they are to arrest a person who is being prostituted on Lake Street specifically, or the Lake Street corridor. And what they're doing is, depending on how many offenses they have, or if it's a repeated offense, they'll either offer an opportunity to do like restorative justice to lessen their charge and still be charged. I don't know the charge if it's gross misdemeanor or misdemeanor, I'm not quite sure, but I want to say it's a misdemeanor. And if they are repeated offenders, they will serve time in jail. So right now what they have been seeing, this is just from a meeting I was at a few weeks ago, is that they haven't been seeing a lot of repeat offenders when they're picking up sex buyers. They're picking them up and they're seeing them for the first time. I think what's happening a lot is not that they're not coming back, is that they're either targeting certain areas, setting up a certain like regular system so they know exactly who to contact or where to go, so they're not being picked up in sting operations. And also they might be, again, targeting other areas other than Lake Street. So I know for a fact, we do outreach in the streets, in that Lake Street corridor, and we see the same cars driving around soliciting. So
And we see the same girls.
we see the same girl, yeah.
Yeah. So, and why Lorena's talking about that is because Lake Street is the #1. We used to call it the host row, the #1 most high-risk neighborhood. And the reason for that is because many of us that are on Lake Street, we've aged out of Facebook or Backpage. I'm not going to put an ad for a 56-year-old woman, me, on Facebook when there are all these young women out there. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go hit a quick click on Lake Street. And if I'm LGBTQ, and or if I'm Native American. So that's usually what you see on Lake Street. Yes, my friend?
I'm with the City of Minneapolis Youth Coordinating Board. Last summer, I had an encounter with a young woman who I found walking down Laurie, coming across the Laurie Street Bridge, wrapped in a bath towel.
Oh my God.
Her wrist had been broken. She didn't have any identification, anything, nothing. She had been maced. I took her to North Commons, cleaned her face off. Like, we got out of that immediate area quick because I didn't know if someone was going to be watching.
Right.
If this was going to be,
Yes.
an attack then against me. But I seen this young woman and I could not leave her out there like that for fear of something else that may have happened to her.
Good for you.
I took her to, the thrift store. We got some clothing, what have you, to get her dressed. But I spent about 4.5 hours on the phone calling around for shelters and places, and spoke with our director, Andrew Broke, who's with the City of Minneapolis, and trying to figure out somewhere to take her.
How old was she?
She was 19, 20 years old. Yeah.
Oh, baby, there should have been plenty of places.
No one had any. I ended up having to leave her then at Harbor Lights. And what's really ironic is, I know, I didn't want to leave her there, but I called all the Battle Women shelters, I called Battle Women Hotline, I called Breaking Free, I called everywhere. There was no space available for this baby at this time. No youth leagues, no nothing. There was nothing. What do I do? Should I encounter this? Because I know now, and ironically, because like you said, no identification, no communication tools, no nothing. She logged into my Facebook. Her messenger is still logged into my phone. I can't make it go away.
Oh my God.
So every time she gets messages, it comes through on my phone. I don't know where this baby is, but I seen that she apparently had snitched on someone for North Carolina. She had escaped this whole issue, but all on that Washington side is nothing but trucks. And all of them truckers, so I don't know if she escaped that situation or what it was and how she ended up on Laurie, but she was barefoot, naked. I knew she couldn't have walked far and long, just because what I know was all up and down Laurie. But what do I do in that situation?
Very good point. And I'm going to give the floor to Brandy, and I'm going to sit down. Brandy is our regional navigator. She has a huge job. So let me just tell you, the whole state of Minnesota, from Biwabic to International Falls down to Laverne, Minnesota, has one person responsible for everybody in the state, okay? So even though there may be 500 miles worth of woods in northern Minnesota, there's somebody that still will have to go and meet those people. There is somebody for Hennepin County, and I'm going to let her talk right now. Okay?
Okay.
Okay? Segue.
Yes. Thanks, Terry.
Yep.
So I'm Brandy. I work for an organization called The Link. Has anyone heard of The Link? Okay, so we are a youth serving agency. We deal with homelessness, housing, juvenile justice, and the division that I am in is the Safe Harbor Division. We work with youth who've been sexually exploited and trafficked, and we have a shelter that is in Prior Lake called Passageways. And the regional navigator that Terry was talking about, that is in our state, different counties have regional navigators. So when you were asking, what to do with this young woman, one of the places one of the numbers you can call is the regional navigator. If you look on I think it's the MDH website, they have a map that shows all the different counties, and it'll tell you the regional navigator that's assigned to those counties. And so what you would want to do is reach out to that regional navigator in that county. In Minneapolis, we have a few. There's myself, Heidi, and also Trevor, who's the East Metro Navigator. And what we do is usually we get calls in, and just like you were describing, you would describe this young woman, what is going on, and then we would kind of step in and help you try to figure out shelters and different places for this young person to go to. Go ahead.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, I don't want to relive this situation. but she's in my car. And I'm calling out for help trying to figure out some type of placement for her to go. So I don't want to say to whoever on the phone, yeah, I know this kid is out here prostituting herself.
You don't even have to say that.
Do you see what I'm saying? But I'm letting them know, okay, I found this young woman, she was naked, this is the situation.
Yep.
And there is, I mean, like, do other places know about how this stuff works? Is there a word that I should use? Is there a safe word to say that's going to trigger, to say, yes, this is this, take her here? Or am I gonna just be given a call back or an answer machine where I gotta wait and call back at 7 o'clock and make an appointment and go do this? Because when it's the immediate right there, and I'm trying to get out of the community, because again, I don't know who's watching.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? I don't know who's looking. I don't know who's seen her get into my whip. I don't know who's you. Do you see what I'm saying? And then trying to keep moving because I don't know who's watching. But where's the safe place and the number to call in that immediate situation? Because I've seen it. This is once that was this severe, but I've seen it more times than less. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is what I do. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is, the regional navigators are 24-hour lines. So me and my coworker, one of the two of us, I actually have the phone this week. So what will happen is you call this phone, one of us will answer the phone. If you are, like you said, in a situation where you don't know if someone is following you, usually I would just suggest that you try to get to an area where there is a lot going on, you know, whether it's near a hospital, just somewhere out of that area wherever you pick this young person up. And then you would call our number. Anytime you call us, if it's that situation, we would actually physically get up and come and meet you in that youth. So it's not a hotline where the phone is ringing and ringing, or you get an answer machine. You will talk to a live person. So this is either gonna be me, Heidi, and or Trevor in the East Metro. And then, like I said, from there, we could meet up with you and try to best help this youth. And a lot of times, like you said, you're not in a position where you probably work with these kind of young people in this situation. So I would say the best thing to do is call the regional navigator. We will come out to meet you. And again, a lot of times, these young people, when they know that there's someone who specifically works with these issues, they'll open up a little bit more to us sometimes, because they feel like, okay, well, you know, if they work with, you know, someone who's been exploited or trafficked, it's gonna be a little easier to talk to us. So I would always just suggest that you call the regional navigator in your area, in the metro or wherever you are, and you usually will get someone who's gonna answer the phone right when you call them. Now, I can't speak for the, you know, further north or south or other areas, but in the metro, if you call our regional navigator phones, we answer.
What's that number for Hennepin County?
There's, I don't know the number on it, but let's see, the number is, I'm gonna give it, is it 232?
Yeah, 54.
Thanks, Bethany.
You're welcome.
Is that 612?
Yeah.
612.
232
I have 3 phones, you guys.
5428.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But
So my question is, how come she couldn't find, she was pretty resourceful, had this trauma, this poor girl that's out there, and I also work for the city of Minneapolis, just so you know. Like, why couldn't she find some help? I mean, that's really distressing to me, because I think about, you know, she is a resourceful person. Think of someone else that would, I mean, I think about if my granddaughter was driving down the street, who was 21, and saw somebody that she could, what would she do? You know? So I guess that's one question, that she couldn't get through to anybody is really a problem. Okay, that's one thing, because not everybody's gonna have those numbers you just gave out. The second thing is it possible that we hook it up, if you dial 311, you can get a number to connect somebody to?
211.
211
Already does it.
yeah, you call.
211 already does it.
Yeah, they do.
Cornerstone.
Yep, so they have a database, and if you call them, they can look in their database and show you exactly who may have shelter at the time. And again, you all, we don't have enough shelter. We don't have enough resources, and we don't have enough programs. So unfortunately, sometimes you may be calling shelters and or, you know, navigators, and there may not be somewhere for this young person or adult to go. And that is what we face, on a regular basis. There are plenty of times, that I'll call places that I work with on a regular to get my youth in, and I can't get them in, and so I can't necessarily give you that answer, and to say what exactly or, why that person couldn't get in. There may be different factors as to why that person could not have gotten into shelter or,
Because a lot of people don't know about 211, just so
Right.
you know that.
Yeah.
But they don't, and I mean, and I'm just gonna say this, because I'm sorry, but navigating that day and our little orange handy book that we get from Hennepin County and calling, and my director was sending me all kinds of lists of people to call, every shelter, every bed. There was not anyone who said, okay, you have a young person in crisis, we'll come out to meet you. There was, oh, she doesn't have ID, oh, no, there's nothing, blah, blah, blah. So little things like this, being that we know these type of things about sex trafficking and the danger of sex trafficking and how these young men and women are stripped of their identity. When someone who's answering the phone at these battered women shelters or at, the homeless youth shelters or what have you are hearing these things, that should automatically kind of trigger something to say, this is the situation then that's going on and this is how this should be handled, because I was devastated, and my coworker could tell you, for weeks behind leaving this baby at Harbor freaking Lights. God bless the place for being there for what it does for some people, because I know that it is a help to some, but leaving her there, seeing all of those pedophilia type men all up and around there, and I'm like, God, I don't want to, and everything in me was like, just take her home and feed her and help her, and but I know that's not the reality that I could deliver for her, but I just wanted her to have some other type of help, and it just was not there. And I know that shelters can put cots out, at battered women shelters, they can put cots out, they can create temporary living situations. I know that there are shelters that create hotel spaces to put women in and, get someone over there. I sat down, I spoke with Liz Richards and all of these individuals afterwards, after the fact, but what are the right now code words? What are those?
Well, welcome to our nightmare. I want to just tell you that.
I can't speak for other organizations, so I'm just gonna put that out there.
Yes, ma'am.
But what I will tell you is, even with doing this, and I go to a lot of different organizations and do trainings, they're not trained on exploitation and trafficking. So in their defense, I will say a lot of these organizations have not properly been trained on what to know what, exploitation and trafficking are. So I will say, with the frustrations and those things, it can be hard and it can be frustrating, even when I'm calling shelters. And they're unaware. They don't have the training, and or they may not have the space. And there's a lot of different things that are needed when you are working with someone who's been exploited and trafficked. Although you're saying, you want them to get into shelter and things like that, sometimes some of our individuals don't feel comfortable, being somewhere and someone finding out that they've been exploited and trafficked. So my hope is that they make more shelters that are geared more to trafficking and exploitation victims. But, sometimes when you're talking to shelters, it could be a funding thing. Sometimes they can't take people or into their facilities because of certain things, So I'll just say that, so I can't really talk about that because I don't know what, they do or what, how they're funded and just things like that. So I know there's frustrations, but there's also that other side of it too. So I will say though, there's a lot of lack of training for a lot of these things.
On that, so your story sadly is not unique.
Right.
I've been doing this work for over 25 years, and before I was in high school as a peer counselor, so that's 25 years as a professional. I've seen that through and through a situation. I think there's very clear system barriers as well, where there's responses in the domestic violence that I'm with Tubman, so we have over 25 years partnered specifically to do overflow for people who face exploitation. And because of those kind of situations, make sure they're received in MCBW, MCASA as well, on these other barriers to go into overflow situations. We do 24/7 walk-in as well, so drop-in, people show up. We face very, very particular system barriers, and we're not alone in that across the state. we have a floor and a half of space unfunded, okay? That we could serve people in, specific for 13 to 24, that age group. I know others are in that place. There's some other programs across the state that because their funding is tied to one particular area, they can't even be flexible to
Yep.
respond.
And that's
to
what
how
happens
that
a lot
age would
in
fit.
our.
So there's a ton beyond that are funded open beds across the state as well. But the resources I think generated are good ones right now. And I would add to that, Youth Service Network as well, the app, if you don't have that downloaded on your phone.
Yeah, the YSN app, yeah. And I encourage a lot of our youth to download that. And on this app, it will list all the youth serving shelters in the metro. It'll also tell them how to get a hold of any outreach workers that may be out at the time doing any kind of outreach, places where they can get meals at, places where they can see nurses and hospitals and things like that. And I will tell you, it is widely used by a lot of our youth. A lot of our youth, especially when they call the Navigator phone, they'll say, yep, I've been looking on the YSN app. So that is actually going to be a really good tool if you do encounter a young person, even if it's just they're just saying, you know, I just need something to eat. Just try the YSN app. That's a really, really good tool. And again, now that you know, you can always reach out to us at the regional navigators. And because a lot of the navigators, they're tied to different organizations as well. And we all talk to each other, the navigators and things like that. So if you do have a youth and you go to a navigator and, you know, they're not answering or they just, you know, are to capacity, they'll always reach out to another navigator and say, hey, you know, I have this youth. Is there a way we can kind of work together to try to figure out something for this youth, this young person, to get them somewhere?
Can I ask another question?
Yep.
Is it, kind of the same way if we find a young person who has been sex trafficking and we're, you know, relieving them from a situation, if we find them in Hennepin County, do they have to be serviced in Hennepin County? Can we take them to Dakota or somewhere, you know what I mean, or wherever?
Absolutely.
Whoever.
All you have to do is just reach out to that navigator. And if this youth is saying they're not feeling safe in the metro or wherever they're at, that's then we can contact the navigator outside of the metro and say, hey, you know what, this youth isn't feeling safe in this area. Can we, you know, work together and maybe get that youth?
Okay.
Yes, it does not have to be that they have to specifically work with the navigator in their county.
County, okay.
No.
But I gotta say one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sorry that you had to go through all that. That is very traumatic, and that's something that you can't undo.
Yeah.
And can you imagine what we go through?
Yes, ma'am.
Every
Yes, ma'am.
single day. And when we had, like at the end of the Super Bowl, we had 15 people spending the night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that Monday, when I had to tell them
Yeah, we had
to
let
go,
them know. Yeah.
that was so hard. And that's why we keep our shelter during the day. It's unfunded,
Yeah.
but we give showers. We give a change of clothes. We give people at least the opportunity from Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 to sleep somewhere and to take a shower, to do their laundry, and to give them a warm meal. But the bottom line is there is not political will in this state to do anything more. If we would have just cashed in the coats that those 10,000 volunteers wore during the Super Bowl, we wouldn't have a problem today with housing. And that's what we're talking about. This is hard. It's hard on all of us. It's the hardest thing we do when we can't get a person in to somewhere. But there are some hotel vouchers we can do sometimes. But the other thing I want to tell you is be very careful when you have someone in your car. Because I've had this happen before with some of our volunteers. They've taken somebody who was just needed to go home, but will you stop at SA first? They run into SA, they meet their drug dealer in the bathroom, they're in the car, you're on your way home, cops pull you over, you're going down, okay? The other thing, we had a volunteer, she insisted on taking one of our women home, and we all want to, but we can't. She insisted on taking a woman home. The next day, her neighbor's house was completely wiped out. She had found, somehow she knew that the neighbor's key was in the junk drawer of the house that she was staying at, took it, and that was her MO, theft, wiped out the neighbor. So hurting people hurt people. We want to do anything we can to not have to turn a trick, okay? And it depends on where we're at in our healing process. But you did a great thing, and I probably would have done the same. but I'm just saying be careful because it is dangerous to pick folks up, but God bless you, and you had a covering around you that day, so you did the right thing. But this is hard on all of us. So what we can do for each other is try to change that political will, okay? Let's vote for more shelters. Let's vote for specifically sexual violence shelters. We need to do that. And then more housing programs.
And who takes those kids now from 13 to? You guys.
So there's
All
a
the
few,
Safe
there's a few
Harbor.
different, so Safe Harbor, does anyone know what Safe Harbor is? Okay, so under Safe Harbor, if you are a youth between, and the youngest that I've worked with is 10, all the way to the age of 24, our youth now are not being criminalized. So meaning if they are picked up for any prostitution and things like that, they will not be charged at this point. And then they try to get them into programming that, you know, around the metro and just different places that serve youth who've been exploited and trafficked. So there's Brittany's Place, there's Passageways, there's Tubman, the Girls Ranch in Benson, Minnesota. So there are organizations and programs out there. And I know, you know, like you were saying, well, how do we get that information? You can always too call an organization, and a lot of times they'll do trainings. They'll have people come out to wherever you are, and we will train you on what to look for exploitation, you know, how to deal with our youth and things like that. So if you're ever in that situation now, you know, you can call the navigators and we show up. So you won't get the continuous phone ringing. And again, you know, I know that's hard. I know that's hard. But until, you know, everyone gets on board with that, you know, it will happen. But I will tell you though that the people that I work with and the navigators that I do work with, they're awesome. And our kids trust us, not right away all the time, but when they see that there is someone there to help them, they do tend to open up. And so I just want to say thank you, you know, for being that person that stops, because people don't stop. People don't, you know, ask if our youth are okay, or, you know, and in that situation, obviously it was noticeable. But a lot of times, no one knows that our kids are being exploited or trafficked, you know, because they're not walking down the street in a towel. You know, they're going to school every day. They're going to school every day, and at least one of our kids in school is being recruited, you know? And these traffickers, they want our kids to go to school every day. Why? Because they can recruit more kids, you know? So they want them to get dressed up, go to school, do what they need to do, and at the same time, live this other, you know, lifestyle. But again, what we do is we come in contact with our youth and we try to get them the most help, you know, that we can get them in. And whether that's in programming, we also do mobile case management, which I do, so we meet our youth in the community as well. So if a youth, and they don't necessarily have to be in shelter either. So if they are identified as being trafficked or exploited, and maybe shelter isn't that option. Yep.
Including for youth, reduce anxiety about the short shelter stays in that. So that's what we're positioning for. But also the self-referral for young people to come, so it doesn't always, it's not always going to be, you know, that they're feeling comfortable with a person they don't know. So it really empowers them to know they're in safe places to go. We've had a long-standing response as well, again, since we started 40 years ago with this area of violence and survivors, is going into overflow. That has changed recently for people. They're not as able to go into overflow situations for a whole variety of reasons, but and part of it is also to just make the need known to people that this is an issue. It's not going away unless we do something about it, and it's not 7 that time. And we're 91%. I'll add 91% in our
So when you see people going to the Capitol for like Homeless Day on the Hill, join those people.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's how we got Safe
And
Harbor in action.
next Wednesday is MCBW's Day on the Hill, isn't it?
Action Day.
Yeah, Action Day, Wednesday.
Yeah, the 11th, kind of overtime that.
Okay, I'm gonna give people a break right now and then transition to our next speaker. Thank you, Terry, that was really informative. And thank you, Brandy, for stepping in. Brandy didn't know she was gonna be here today, so. Doing a great job just filling in. Let's take a 10-minute break, so let's just be back at 47 after, and then we will have another speaker. speaker, and then we're gonna do a panel discussion, so we'll have more time for questions. Their grad program, she has 10 plus years experience working with youth who experience exploitation and homelessness. So she's gonna talk a little bit more about the intersection of sex trafficking and housing specifically. And I'll turn it over to her to introduce herself. I'll get you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate all the stories, both I think from Terry and then some of the concerns that some of the folks who work with you have had. So a little bit about the family partnership. We've been around for over 100 years now. We've had various different names, so you might not necessarily recognize as a family partnership. And the Pride program itself has been around for about 40 years. We have been serving women and youth who are victims of sexual exploitation, trafficking, prostitution for 40 years. And we basically started through a survivor who found herself not knowing where to go for support and wanted to reach out to a community. So her mental health therapist at the family partnership started this group as a support group setting. Thank you. And then that turned into a full-blown program. Now, one of the things that we have is these are all the things that we provide. So we do case management services, we do legal advocacy, support groups, prevention groups, presentations as we're doing today. We do actual street outreach as well. We have a crisis line. We have a transitional housing program. We work with policy assistance advocacy, so we are on the hill many times trying to advocate for our participants and the families we serve. So those are some things that we do now. What we do have is that we have quite a big staff. So myself, I'm the program director. We have a family advocate. We have a criminal justice advocate. We have a young men LGBTQ advocate who works with survivors of identified male LGBTQ population. Client services coordinator, a mental health therapist, and we just recently added, well, I see her advocate up there. We recently added another person who's working in a mobility mentoring approach, which helps some of our clients, a very specific group of our clients who are past or who are more stable right now within their housing and their job to get to that next level of what economic independence will look like. So one of the things that you've heard a lot about is the life itself. How do we solve sex trafficking, right? And everybody can have very different answers to that. Like, how do you solve it? How do you solve something so big? So some people might tell you, okay, the way that you solve it is you gotta arrest all the pimps and put them in jail. Okay, fine, you do all that. Okay, it's still going on. Why? Because there's a demand. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna arrest all the sex buyers on Lake Street and do sting operations and get everybody off the streets or purchasing sex. Probably will still happen. Because what we're talking about is something deep-rooted within our society that allows things like this to happen and continue to grow. So if you think of a plant that kind of keeps growing lopsided, something that is in itself poison, and you keep chopping it off at the stem, it keeps growing back, and it keeps looking like the same thing. You can't quite get rid of it, so we need to pull it at its root. And what that root looks like is the inequality. And we're looking at right now, so Terry, for example, said that 67% of the women that her program serves are African American. Right, or people of color. 80% of the women that we are serving are women of color. 79% of them are African American. So whatever population we don't feel like we have the cultural capacity or competence to serve, we will refer out. So we work alongside MIWRC, Minnesota Women's Resource Center, because they have very specific services that serve that population. We understand that. We have our staff is a staff of women of color. We approach our services understanding where they have come from, where they might want to go. Our staff is also filled with survivors. Many of our staff are survivor mentors. And so we kind of understand the approach that we have to take in order to combat this issue. So when I talk about, and this is just, I wanted to put this up as our services, that's all I have to show you, because I really want to talk specifically around housing. So when we talk about the disparities and talk about what really fuels this type of crime, right? Very much so, it's a crime. We're talking about the disparities of housing and resources in various communities of color in particular. And so when we work with our clients, the first thing that they come to us with, the first thing that we will ask them is, do you have a place to stay? Where are you staying? Are you staying in the street? Are you staying in a doorway? Are you staying in a car? Are you staying in a shelter? Are you staying with friends? where are you sleeping? And every single one would say, I don't really have a place to stay right now, I'm kind of in between places. Or I've hit a place where I really don't have anywhere to stay, I'm sleeping in the street. Or like Terry said, I'm doing whatever I can to stay safe, so I'm staying with a trick that I usually do lets me stay there 3 to 4 times a night. Obviously with an exchange of something else, right? So most of them that we're talking about, so we served 270 people last year, 2017. Out of those 270 people, 47% of them were safe harbor age, so it's under the age of 24. So these are youth. Out of those 47%, 35% of them were precariously housed. So that means that these youth that were coming to us didn't have a place to stay, or again, we're sleeping in friends' couches, cars, shelters. We saw them at treatment places. We saw them there incarcerated. So we saw them at juvenile detention centers or county homeschool. So just because they have a place to sleep for the night then and there, that is not a solution to housing. That is a temporary solution to 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, however long your sentence is going to be, your treatment is going to last. If you're willing to stay that long, you're going to have a place to sleep. But if you don't, then you're going to have to suffer like the rest of the people on the street that we work with. And homelessness is one of the biggest reasons why most women, most of our clients, I will say, will tell us why they keep going back to the light. Because if you have nothing to stand on, if you don't know where you're going to put your head, where you're going to lay your head every night, and you don't know that it's one dependable, consistent, and safe, then you have no foundation of basic needs or stability. And if you have no stability, how do you then create a scaffold to keep growing, right? How do you then build your skills and make a resume, apply for a job? How do you access mental health services or get benefits? How do you go around most of the day without having that single thought in your head of thinking, where am I going to sleep tonight? Because that is truly what fills your head all day. Where am I going to sleep tonight? Who am I going to call? Who texted me back? Who am I going to run into? What do I have to do? So without housing, we can't really build on anything. A lot of us here, and many or all of us here, hopefully, know where we're going to put our head. We're going to lay our head at night. That is a gift. Because like I said, the majority of our clients come to us without that luxury, that privilege, right? Privilege. That basic right to have a place to sleep. And so say, for example, then what we do best is, where do you need to sleep? Let's go ahead and contact some shelters. And the woman in the back, I totally feel you. I am half the time super frustrated with the system. And like Tamara was saying, it's a systems issue. Because you're right, we have many battered women's shelters out there. A lot of them will not take our clients. Tubman will, because they serve specifically, right? Because they understand the intricacies and the intersectionality between domestic violence and sexual exploitation. But a lot of them won't. And unless you don't have this code word, and I get you, and I was like nodding at you, I was like, I don't even have that code word, and I work in this system. And I don't want to tell that girl that she's got to sell her story of exploitation to make it seem like she really is unsafe in order for her to get housing that night. And that is truly how it feels sometimes. And that's where the advocacy piece comes in, where you get on your phone, you say, you made the phone, I'm going to talk to her right now. Of a conversation, right? Because what does your intake process look like? Are you asking the right questions? If you're asking the person who is sexually exploited or who's been in life prostitution for a number of years, the same questions that you're asking a person who is battling domestic violence, and you're determining their entry or their eligibility into your shelter based on what they answer, it's going to be different. They still feel for their life every day, like Terry said. You walk into a burning building every day. Every day, you're re-triggering the PTSD, the trauma, the hypervigilance. Every single day, whether it's with your pimp, whether it's with your trick, whether it's whatever it is, with the system itself, walking into trying to get benefits and talk to people who don't quite get what the hell you need. So it is super frustrating. Luckily, we have a team of amazing women who know that system all too well, and we know the loopholes to it. I don't know what else to say. And you've got to learn how to play it until we're all on the same page. And we will be on the same page. I truly believe we will be. We're on the way. We're not quite there, and I think education and training is a key piece to that. So once that person comes into our offices, they call a crisis line, they text one of our advocates, they come in, the first thing we do is how do we find new housing? Like Brandy said, is we go through day one, particularly, like usually. It's a great resource, it's one hotline for the entire state. You're gonna get all the information that you need from these trained advocates, phone advocates, counselors. Title is. So they'll let you know if they have that available and where does this person want to go? Do they want to stay in the cities? What are they looking at? Demographics, preference, gender identity, all of those things come into play. They'll help us find shelter. Perfect world, we find shelter that night. If we don't, then we are lucky enough where we have funding that allows us to place some individuals, some of our clients or new clients into hotels for the night.
It's not all the time. but-
It's not all the time. Oh no, and it's tough because you gotta be choosy. And how do you be choosy with someone, with 5 people who are experiencing trauma in a terrible situation, and you gotta ask yourself, okay, shoot, which one are we gonna pick?
Yeah, you gotta figure out
Who's the most at risk? Who's the most that really needs it right now? How do you do that? How do you then try to compare somebody's trauma? And it's really difficult. So funding, support, passing legislation, all of that is necessary for organizations to survive, for our clients to get the services that they need. And so once we find housing, a shelter for that particular place, then that person is stable just for that moment. Okay, we're talking about just shelter. Anything can happen once they walk into shelter. They can walk into shelter, be extremely triggered. They might know this person, that person might share what they don't want. They might they might be trying to get clean, and the person that's funky next to them is getting high. I mean, there's so many factors that come into play when that person gets in, if they're going to be successful in that shelter space. Say they are, they're successful. They made it through the night, they meet with our advocate the next day, we start working on getting the documents back. We start working on like, what do you need? Let's talk about what you need. What's the bigger picture here? So a million things will pop up, right? Because a million things are wrong. And this person has most likely been experiencing these things for years and years and years. And so they have been trying to get their kids back, they've been trying to get clean, they need a job, they have criminal offenses and a criminal background, they have evictions, they have, again, the list goes on. So we try to tackle those things as best as possible, one at a time. Working on with them one at a time, whatever is most important, right? The basic needs. And again, where we start is housing. You need a place to sleep. 1, so you can be rested and awake when they see you tomorrow. 2, so I know that you're at least gonna have some food in your belly. And 3, I know we're gonna pick you up because you don't even have a phone right now, right? And I know that you're gonna be safe just for that night. Safe being a relative word, always, but safe. So once we get that person into shelter, that person usually has to stay in shelter and abide by a certain amount of rules. This is a person who might have spent 15, 20 years on the streets, who does not do well with rules, especially shelter rules and curfews, and no, you can't eat at this time, you can only eat at this time. I know you can't bring all your stuff, you can only bring a bag, or you can't bring any food from outside. There's a million reasons why shelters have rules in place, and all of those become barriers for someone who has mental illness, someone who has chemical dependency, someone who has lived in the streets for years. And so those are barriers that come up all the time, every day. How to get you, all right, safety plan. How are we gonna get you to stay one more night in this shelter? Who are your support people? What are going to be your triggers? What are your coping skills? And it's an everyday thing. Until we get through a point where now, obviously, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, can get an appointment with a coordinated access or coordinated entry assessor. Not easy. Not a lot to go around. So once you get that appointment, you sit down with them, and it's a long intake process, and then you just wait. and you wait for that phone call. Meanwhile, you have to make sure that you stay good with the shelter so you have a place to stay, and then all these other factors that are surrounding you every day are not going to be enough triggers to get you off that shelter and back into the streets. So it's an everyday hassle to try to find, again, a consistent, dependable, and safe place to put your head. That's it. All I gotta do is get in my car and go home. That's all I have to do. I don't have to worry about it every day. I don't have to jump through hurdles so I can go to sleep in my bed at night. I just make sure I got gas in my car. And so that is an everyday struggle for our participants. All right, so then the person says, okay, hey, you've got the appointment, coordinated access, coordinated entry. If you have a child, coordinated access. That's a lot quicker and faster, especially if you're under that safe harbor age, or a lot of our clients are not. So even if you are, say you're 23 years old, and before safe harbor happened, you got picked up a couple of times. You got a couple of prostitution charges, and you got charged. Nobody told you about our gift program, where you can actually go through treatment and program to actually get that gross meter reduced to a misdemeanor, and then eventually apply for expungement. Nobody told you about that, so you have this felony in your record. Or maybe you had it from a different state. Or maybe you have it based on something else, some other felony, like Terry said. It's not just prostitution, right? It is everything about the life. It's the forging of checks. It is the eviction notices. It is the possession charges. It is the shoplifting, the stealing, the bank, all of it. You are immersed in it. And you can't, everywhere you turn, you're gonna be faced with that challenge. So say you get that, all right, hey, now you get to tour a couple of places. These are the places that are available depending on the subsidy and the job that you have. Again, also I forgot to mention, in order to that you have to get subsidy, you have to have income. For the most part. Not everybody, but for the most part, all of our clients have to have some sort of way to prove that they can pay part of that rent. So whether it's our program helping them to do that and covering some of that cost for the first few months, which we're lucky we can do that with some of our clients, not everybody. Or you may be going to a transitional housing program where you don't have to pay that right away, and then you kind of get stable. So many different pathways. I don't want to kind of go, too far away or elaborate too much. But say you find a place, and you get to find a little apartment in a complex, and you're like, okay, this is great, oh my God, I'm gonna have my own space, my own bathroom, my own living room, it's gonna be awesome. You tour the place, you meet the landlord, you run a background check. So then you run that background check, and they see that you have prostitution charges on your record. Felonies that are never gonna come off. Felonies are gross misdemeanors, misdemeanors. Yes.
I thought you got a felony after 1 year, or whatever the time limit is off.
No, sir. I wish. That's definitely not the case. Felony
That's
state.
not the case?
No. You have to file for an expungement if you want to get that felony off your record.
Okay.
And you can't, not everyone is qualified to file an expungement. Actually, not many people at all. So usually you have to have permission from a judge. Judge will review your entire case, and they'll see what charges you can expunge and why, and what proof you have to say, well, I went to treatment, and that's why I had this possession charge or something, and then they'll go through a review, and then you will have the opportunity to expunge, and then you have to fill out the paperwork to expunge your charge. It's not that simple. It seems that
that will
simple.
follow you through the rest of your life?
Yeah. It'll follow you through your rental history, your job history, employment history. A lot of the women we have that we work with have charges from 10, 12 years ago that are still on there. Women that volunteer with me, I run their background checks, and that's on there. So I'm running background checks just to make sure that's the process I have to go through, and those are on there. Obviously, I'm not going to say, oh, you can't work here or volunteer here, right? But those are charges that are continuing to stay on your record. And so think about
know
what
that.
a lot of people don't. And that's why I'm so glad that we have this space to talk about it. Because the barriers are real and they're permanent. Unless you know how to work the system, have someone who works by your side, who knows how to advocate, who knows the law pretty well, who knows how to connect you with someone who knows the law and how to get around those systems. So I just want to get, sorry, I'm going to get to you in 2 seconds. So this landlord comes and sees, okay, so the background check, you got a felony. What do you think that person's going to say? Recently, they could refuse to take your Section 8 depending on your background. Up until, what are we, June, a couple months ago, I wanna say, I might be like off of my timeline. But some landlords could refuse to take your Section 8, your well-deserved Section 8 that you fought for and waited in line for because of your background. Yes?
I just wanted to say that landlords were doing that in Minnesota and they weren't supposed to. It was
Yes. Oh,
talked about last year that they should not be discriminating because,
so it was always against the law?
yeah, it was
Okay.
always, it's against people who have Section 8. They don't want
Yeah,
Section 8 tenants.
right,
So
right.
it's a law now, they can't, but you know, they could do other things to
Mhm, right, right.
do that, yeah.
Yeah, and our clients don't know that it's against the law that they do that. They think,
Yeah.
oh man, that's the system, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
They don't think that it's just that person that they think, well, I'm not gonna get housing. And that Section 8 voucher will expire. Right? So many times that has happened to our clients. And we're like running around trying to find someone to rent to them.
Sorry, I missed that. What is illegal, or what can they discriminate against?
Section 8 vouchers.
So not people with criminal background.
Well, they can run your criminal background and they can say, I'm not renting to you. They might not tell you I'm not renting to you because you have
Right.
a prostitution charge, but they'll run your criminal background, see that you have an unlawful detainer, which is like an eviction here, and a prostitution charge, and like, sorry, we're full up. Actually, I just rented that last unit, now that I remember. Right? Some sort of discrimination, yes.
Is there, a program that for, women who have been victims of sexual violence who, are coming out of that life? You know how like the Underground Railroad was where they can change their identity to, you know what I mean, and get a clean slate? Is there something that is offered to women like that? Because if they're transitioning through a lot of the violence and I know this person and I know, they know a lot of information traveling throughout that industry, is there something to help them rehab to walk away where they're able to
Like
move,
if they trade information.
Yeah, well, I mean, not where they trade information, but I'm myself. So that now I've experienced all of this violence, I've experienced all this trauma, I have these criminal records, I've fought to get out of this life. Now that I rehabilitate myself, am I able to obtain a new identity and walk into something like women who, were going through the Underground Railroad
I know what
system,
you're saying.
escaping domestic violence? Is there
Yeah.
something that's parallel to that?
I think Tamara, you might have a better
Yeah,
idea.
so there is technically expungement,
Right.
to
Yeah.
go through. The stuff, and some of those have improved, it takes a long time. What's a problem right now is the state database will expunge it, but those websites often keep it alive. So we partner really closely with some employment programs specific for people that have a felon history, because they can then take and protect and make sure that they're not facing discrimination at any, at the phase of review of their application, at the phase of a background check, that they're protecting them against all that. There's a safe at home program, which allows for someone to have their confidential PO to get mail at if they're really trying to be more anonymous. And that is, we're a site for that. There's several across the state that have people trained in helping people enroll in that program, and it does apply, you can get access to that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But like Tamara said, it's a long process, and not everyone is eligible to expunge,
Sure.
and not all crimes are eligible to expunge, right? And so one of the things, like I mentioned, we do is that with GIFT, the Pride Program's been doing this work with Hennepin County for a long time, is that we offer an opportunity for women who have a certain amount of prostitution charges in their record, once they're picked up, to go through treatment, because we know that obviously there's morbidity, right, of a mental health, chemical dependency, and sexual exploitation in life of prostitution. Usually you're just one big mix. And so in order to do that, instead of serving time in jail, you go through this 2-year program, have your own probation officer, go through treatment, go to our classes, and then eventually graduate. And as long as you don't violate or have any similar crimes, you graduate from GIFT, you're available for that, lower from gross misdemeanor to misdemeanor, and then you're available for an expungement. And then available for an Usually how it's sold, and I'll be honest with you, is like, and then you can expunge it, and then it'll be expunged, actually, and then it'll expunge itself. It doesn't expunge itself. It's a long process to get that process started, right? So,
Got you off track there, but.
no, it's okay.
I just checked the state, it costs about, upwards of $2,500.
To expunge.
And a lot of these people don't have that kind of money.
No. So, we're back at our story, and I know I only got 2 more minutes. So we're back at our story with this person who found an apartment, found a landlord. Landlord's not gonna be like, I don't take women who prostitute themselves, right?
That's discrimination.
Right, but what will they say? You can't do that. You're not renting, we're out, or you don't have this, or oh, your paycheck looks like that, or oh, what happened in the 6 months you were unemployed? You might not be, and it's a million reasons. They take your $50 for your deposit for your rental application, right? They sure will. Knowing they're gonna deny you. And then they deny you, and then you're back to where you started. So now you're out of the life. You went through a shelter of maybe 30 to 90 days, which is, for a lot of people, very unpleasant situation because of all the things that they're facing. Then you potentially went through transitional housing. Now you've gotten hopefully maybe clean if that was one of the issues. Now you build a skill set. Now you found an apartment and now you can't get housed because your criminal background is impeding you from doing that. So unless you go through a program like a transitional housing program funded through HUD or OEO, which will allow you to do that obviously because we're looking at housing first, then you're kind of screwed. So then that's when we come in, right? And we're not coming in with solutions or like magic wands, but we're coming in with advocacy and knowledge and connections. Connections to landlords who work with us, who know that we're gonna write a letter of intent and support, and we're gonna say we're working with this client, we're working them weekly or bi-weekly, and they're receiving this type of support. They, maybe we'll help them pay. We have a transitional housing program, so we can help them pay their subsidy as well, because we have funding through OEO to do that. But a lot of programs don't have that, right? And we served 273 women last year, and we have 1 criminal justice advocate, 1 housing advocate. So, and like I said, most of the women, our clients are coming in with housing instability. So it is really frustrating. I can imagine frustrating for a person who deals with it 1 time, a person who deals with it every day, and then a person I'm not even dealing with it. Like, I'm still removed, So I still, again, get to go home, put my head on my pillow, go to sleep, wake up next morning, and go to work. So it is a huge issue. And that's when I talk about how we can keep cutting that bad flower 1,000,000 times at the stem, and it'll keep growing, because until we really tackle and really identify, break down those systems that keep primarily people of color, and that is research, down in a situation where they will have to do whatever they need to do to not be homeless, even if it's for the night. We're gonna keep seeing it happen. It's a cycle. It doesn't matter how many pimps you arrest, how many sex buyers you put in jail, or you shame through John School, how many rescued victims you have. It's gonna keep happening. So, a lot of people ask me, like, what, especially because I give the type presentation, like, God, why do you even do this? They're like, your job is so horrible and hopeless. But it isn't, right? Because as much as we'd like to help every client that comes to our doors to become stable and do all these things, we can only have the funds and the means to help some, but those some have really great success stories. And what we're tackling here is what Terry said, which are these generational curses. So Pride is very unique in itself that it serves all across the lifespan. Nothing will restrict you from receiving our services. Some programs don't have that luxury or that funding. They have to cut you off, they have to cut off because they only have up to 24 years old, 30 years old, whatever that is, right? Or so much time that you serve here with our program. So we can serve across the lifespan, and we have. And we serve generations of women. We serve grandmothers and daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters. because we serve families. So we serve a 50-year-old woman who's been coming to our groups and is still struggling with chemical dependency and trying to get out of the life. We serve her daughter, who's maybe in transitional housing, still also chemical dependency, and was also in the life. We serve the granddaughter who might see them at school or at juvenile detention center because she got caught up, because she didn't have a stable environment to live in. And maybe that granddaughter also is pregnant and has a kid. So that person is being served by a friendly advocate to make sure that they're getting the parenting skills and the proper care that they need. And so it is generational. It's something that will continue, again, just like that cycle will continue to happen until we break that. In order to break it, we have to look at the roots of the issue. You can break the market as many times as you want, but you don't break the system and rebuild it so it can benefit everybody involved in it, then we will continue having this problem, I don't know, for the end of time. I see Tamara like shaking her head, it's so true. And it's not, it can be done. I truly believe it can be done. It's not going to be done right away. Not every shelter is going to know that every time that you make that call and you talk about this particular client, you're going to let them in. But it does get done because I can tell you right now, what Terry said is like we don't even use the word prostitute anymore. We don't use that language anymore. You know how long that word has been around? We don't use that language anymore. It's frowned upon. And so we use commercially sexually exploited person, prostitute, ones we're trying to see our victims for who they are, which are victims and not offenders. And they're a product of this issue. And so we are making changes. And in the last 10 years, I can tell you we're making huge changes all over the country. And Minnesota is definitely a lead in that, I have to say. A big, big lead in that. So that's my presentation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. And I want to make sure Tamara got some time. I'm sorry, Tamara.
How much is that dinner on May 1st? I was on the website.
Oh,
You
the
guys have
luncheon?
that big dinner.
Oh, yeah. I was like, dinner. I was like, I don't know how much it is, but I will be speaking at it though.
You will be.
Yes.
Yeah, I was on your website here. That's what I've been doing on the phone.
Oh, that's okay.
Checking out your website.
No worries. You can take my card too. I put it right up here.
Okay.
So you can take my card. Yeah, we'd love to have you. We are doing a luncheon, one of our biggest fundraisers for the family partnership, and we are focusing a lot on generations and how to make sure that we build each generation after the other. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. You guys have been hearing a lot from Tamara in the back. She's another one of our panelists here today. So I'm just going to let her have a few minutes to talk about herself and her work. And then we're going to bring all three remaining people up to have questions from the audience and do a little panel until we run out of time. So this is Tamara Stark. She's from Tubman. And I will let her introduce herself.
Hi all, good to see you. I do have a PowerPoint, but we will let go of that PowerPoint in the interest of time with all this. So I work as Director for Youth and Family Services at Tubman. We're an area anti-violence nonprofit named after Harriet Tubman, the abolitionist, and still freedom fighting. So there we go. I oversee a range of prevention programs, intervention including shelter and housing, specific for youth, also our DV shelters with families, outreach and youth leadership that is driven around social justice, cause-connected changes on the system level. We serve about 25,000 people each year, most of whom are youth. A lot of people know us for our domestic violence shelters, which also have mostly children. A lot of people don't know that part. We've been fortunate enough to be able to build out, starting in 2007, specific to the need of people who've been exploited because of the long-standing generations we saw of all forms of trauma. Our Safe Journeys Youth Shelter and Housing. It serves young people, including those who are parents, who have faced, they don't have to identify the form of trauma they've had to be served. We're full constantly, sadly. We've served over 100 young people and their 40 children since opening it in 2015. We work closely with 70 partner organizations as well, and that includes legal, employment programs. We have youth diversion as well, so we're in partnership with referrals there. Our school systems, law enforcement, a host of, fortunately, other community providers too and networks. We have come from the base of complex trauma trauma. So that is sadly, all the young people we've served that have been exploited have also experienced domestic violence in the past. So it is like peeling an onion. We want to reduce barriers truly so that we are hearing, that they need assistance, and that's all that needs, they're coming to us for help. So it can be a 24/7 call, a text. Sadly, we don't have the text. Had the state's first text line. We don't have that 24/7. So it is, to connect with a specific provider. There are some other 24/7 text lines, like Day One has one, so that's helpful. And then we have Drop-In Outreach Center. We did just expand as well to Maplewood Mall. So we have outreach space there for young people as well in this need area, and that's great. So we have 2 sites in Minneapolis, 1 in Maplewood, and serve in about 60 homes, young people each year in the metro, and 40 schools, middle and high schools. We do have some college partnerships and connections as well for post-secondary learning. A little bit about me. I grew up in a small town, and so I was a peer counselor, fortunately, small program we had for 2 years in high school. And I heard in my small town that is not very diverse at all. People being exploited, those weren't the words. So this is mostly all white people that I'm hearing this from, okay, as a peer counselor. Going to my lead counselor, talking about it, and sharing my concerns about what's going on. All this violence is happening, and it's like invisible. What's happening with people? How are we helping them? It's sad. Yes, we've done a lot collectively, and we're still in this cycle. So I moved to the metro, had undergrad at a private liberal arts college, and saw exploitation there, and of course all forms of violence and trauma, showing up very differently and not being identified like the way we see in some of the systems we serve. I also am a person that I would like to say I always feel comfortably housed. I don't. I grew up very housing precarious for many reasons, not for lack of my family doing what they were supposed to do, right? My dad's a vet. He grew up in Virginia, one of the first states to, allow slavery. And he lived through segregation. He also lived through desegregation. Thought it would be better in Minnesota. He has his college education. He, had married my mom. Then they had kids. Went to seek housing. Realtor would, they were approved to have a housing loan. Went to seek housing, the realtor would only show them places in certain neighborhoods. I found out our house, when we did get a house in a certain neighborhood we were allowed to look in. I was 5 years old, my sister 1. I found out there was a protest because of who we were moving in. I didn't know this till years later. It was my neighbors that were also my friends, people I trusted. So I know change is possible. I also, because of all that, I still don't ever feel like things couldn't be snapped out from me at any moment. I have my graduate degree. I've been in this field over 25 years. I've been a therapist before. I've worked in juvenile corrections prior to being at Tubman. I've worked at a civil rights school as a consultant and therapist. Local one. I wish it was spread. That's a plug. And I think, so a big question I have is we know there's some really great things out there that can work. And this is not new data we have. 91% of the young people in our housing programs are minority, mostly of African descent. We know some things that are great out there that we're not always hearing about. What are we doing a part to connect to those and elevate those and make sure they're getting the funding they need? People breaking down barriers, taking a stand. The young people, why we do the cause-connected youth leadership too, is they are the drivers of change. You won't hear, they're very humble. You won't hear all their efforts. They're out there trying to fundraise for all kinds of programs. They're helping their peers. For every one young person we're serving, they've got 5 peers out there that we're not serving that they're trying to help on their own. So this investment is an investment in our future. And this is my quick down and dirty here with this. But on that, I know we need to get to panel. So I want to answer questions. I did prepare a use scenario, actually related a bit to the one you brought up. Not as in-depth as that, but wanted to have people break up in groups to basically review the scenario. And I don't know where all you're from your different programs, but what would you do? Because that's what we're faced with every minute of every day is young people in these dire situations. Maybe it's obvious, maybe not so obvious, but at any rate, how are we paying attention? How are we showing up? And then what do we do? What do we know about? How can we all be connectors to resources out there and take a stand so that we're not here talking about the same thing in 5 years?
Will that be up there?
Yeah, I have some leave behinds with a bunch of materials. Leave my card as well. Thank you, and thank you all for being here too.
Does anyone have questions for any of our three speakers today that haven't been brought up yet?
I just want to thank you.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best I've attended.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I
Thank
take
you.
messages back to people I work with.
Yeah, I guess there was one question I wanted to ask you guys. Do you guys, I mean, you guys are fine if you want to sit down, but, so we talked specifically today about housing and sex trafficking. Like, are there other issues that you guys are seeing that really intersect with sex trafficking that need to be addressed beyond just housing? Like, what are some of the common?
There's trauma, mental illness. A lot of times you'll hear that, a youth will just tell you, I'm just homeless, or, they may disclose that they've been exploited or trafficked, but there's just a whole lot more that goes in, to that. So even if they are getting into shelter and things, sometimes that shelter may not necessarily be the right fit, because they may not be offering other services that our youth and or adults need. So some of the things that we run into sometimes is we'll get youth in our program, but there might be a lot of severe mental illness, and or trauma that comes along with the things that they've gone through. So sometimes that's a barrier for them to get into shelters, because some shelters will say they don't have a therapist on site to maybe help this youth, with therapy and things like that. Luckily, we're fortunate enough that we do have a therapist that comes out 2 to 3 times a week, a nurse on staff, school on staff. So some of those are barriers sometimes that we see, that, the mental health, and just a lot of youth not feeling safe with dealing with, whether it's the law, even nurses in hospitals and things like that, because they feel like those things will get told to someone that will put them in an unsafe situation again. So
That's covered by HIPAA.
Yeah, but what we're saying is, though, sometimes some facilities may not have, therapists and things like that. So if a youth is staying at shelter, insurance and things like that are barriers if they don't have insurance and things like that. So that part, the housing piece is taken care of for in the moment, but there's also the trauma and other things that come along with that. So they're still struggling while they're in shelter because they still have no outlet for the other things that they have going on.
Most therapists in this area are booked.
True,
Really booked.
so there's a lot of things to that.
Is there something that's being done about the shelters being able to take women who have 16, 17-year-old sons in these capacities within, shelter environments? And then what are the named shelters that will work directly with our LGBTQ population of youth who are experiencing violence or sexual violence or trauma, or is it just neutral for everyone?
I work for Alexander House as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And they take families in, women, if you have children that are 16, 17, they do, your children.
You can bring your sons?
Yes,
Yeah.
we have 2 there now. So,
Tubman, also
yeah.
Tubman does too, their
Tubman does too.
shelter will take children. I haven't been in any of the shelters that would discriminate against LGBT.
No.
Whatever.
Majority of the shelters
And-
will take LGBTQ and or transgender, but just call and ask, but majority of them do take.
Okay,
Our youth housing at LGBTQ advocate now,
okay,
that is staffed.
okay.
So if there is LGBTQ, you can call Anna Marie and we do have someone that can connect
Okay.
Our youth housing is all genders and DV takes all genders as well. So day one keeps the, it should show, and they would want to know if it's not showing. If you're hearing about barriers to access that aren't reflected on the day one access portal for beds, day one would want to know that, because then they want to talk to the program.
Okay, it's strictly pertaining to the LGBTQ. But there's only like 2 or 3 that I'm hearing that will work with families that have older male children that are going in accompaniment with the
Well,
mother.
Two. Yeah, and also women's advocates, they'll take boys up to 14, but they'll take girls older.
Okay,
So that shelter as well, and also there's mental health on site at Women's Advocate. on
so,
campus.
and my biggest question is, so many of the shelters will only take the boys up to 14, then where do they go? If it is now that they have to be separated from their mother or their family in the moment of crisis?
Okay, so Tubman and a few other shelters will take them older.
Yeah,
We go up to 18.
Yeah, so this particular one will just take boys up to 14. And sometimes what happens, the families, they either don't come, or older boys will stay with relatives and that type of thing. It depends on how desperate the family is. Yeah.
And I want to jump back a bit too on mental health. When people are in crisis, they're showing up, and it's challenging, and there's a lot going on. And so the access, like Randy, the basic access to that is great, and mental health comes in a lot of ways. A therapist is a part of it, and then the peer support, the community support, the getting, access to the goals you want to achieve and getting access to service without judgment. Those things help too. Being able to give back and lead and be regarded as a leader, people like that.
Yeah.
Do you, just my background, there's St. Stephen's has a publication called Guide to the Streets. It's 84
Yes.
pages of resources.
Yes,
Do you use that at all?
we do. We have those. Yep.
You also have to make sure too that organizations are keeping all their information up to date
Yeah,
as
so-
well too, because sometimes, I know you hear people say, oh, well, but, they have to be,
Right.
making sure that they are updating all their numbers and information for the community as well. So just, if you have time, just call around sometimes just to make sure that, what those organizations do, who they accept and things like that, because you don't want to have a youth in a situation where you tell them, oh, you can go here, and then you find out that they can't. So it's just a lot of, just kind of doing a lot of research on your own too, sometimes too. And just finding out that information before you tell, whether it's a youth or an adult, about a certain service or organization, so.
And we find a lot of publications, sometimes they generate stuff from we're not quite sure where. So I'm sure we've all faced where there's misinformation about our own organizations. It didn't come from us. It's like generated from some other sources. So I think those relationships, like we talked about with the young people and how that makes such a difference, and also with our networks too, so we know each other.
Yeah, well, they publish that yearly. The other one is NAMI. We're talking about mental illness, National Association of Mental Illness. And that's a big operation here in the state. They do a lot.
A lot of trainings too, really good training on non-judgmental care too.
They're over Midway. Anyway, that's just.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and St. Stephen's does great work as well.
Are there any other audience questions? Otherwise, I just want to give you guys all one chance to give your last key takeaway for today. If there's one thing that people can do or focus on, what would you recommend?
I would say when you're facing challenges that you have a connector and get it back to the place you've had challenges with, because I oversee a range of 23 different programs and 70 partnerships, and so sometimes we might not always hear back. You all will be in a similar boat with all your things, and I'm sure you all can relate to that. So just building that key relationship, make sure you know the scope of what an agency offers beyond what you think you might know too. So my recommendation is the adult ABCs, always be curious.
Yeah. I like that. Have you heard of Beacon?
Oh, sure.
they're trying to do a lot of housing.
Yep.
They did one last year.
Yeah, we go there, once.
Process working with the,
Absolutely, I got a farewell to this one, it's leaving, nice to see you.
Is there a way that we can get literature and different information from, I have Safe Harbor's information, we have it in our health and wellness packs that we carry in our backpacks in connection with our youth, but now it's good to hear more face on, like hands on, like what's really happening and who, because we just obtained that information. Last summer, our program piloted where we just began really concretely boots on the ground, and so have slowly been gathering all of our tools that we need.
And you can always have us come out, like I said, if
Yes,
you want
yes,
presentations
I would
done,
love
if
that.
you want a training
Yes,
done.
ma'am.
We definitely will come out and do that, and then to give you all the information about our programming, because like I said, we have 4 different divisions with the link. So there's the homelessness, there's the juvenile justice, there's the young families program, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot more to it too, you know, just the trafficking and exploitation piece. But a lot of people don't realize that homelessness will, you know, sometimes for our youth and adults lead to exploitation and trafficking. But always just give us a call when in doubt. I always say, call that navigator number, you know.
That's a dope
just
thing
call
to
us
have, yeah.
and again, even if you don't have all the answers or explanations as to what's going on, just give us a call and we can either talk you through how to work with that young person or adult in that situation, and or we can always come out too.
And I think we should all together as a collective work on that code word. We gotta get that word in. That one word that you can say that everybody, okay, yep, it's one of those, you know?
And if you guys have any resources that you want to share with me, I can email them out to everyone here. So if there's something you think of after this that would be a good resource or tool, just send it my way and I'll share it with everyone here.
Right. Awesome.
Any final thoughts from you guys? It's been a long